Wanted to introduce all of you guys to this amazing panel. We've done the Power Play panel for this is our third year doing it. It actually was created in the New York chapter, and they've had a lot of success, and we wanted to bring it to DC 2 years ago. We had the Redskins highlighted in our panel 2 years ago. Last year we had the NFL Players Association, and this year we're excited to bring in ESPN in a new partnership that is an actual national partnership. So we're excited to have the ladies here, and to moderate our panel, we have Britt McHenry, who I think a lot of people are familiar with because she was here in the DC market with ABC for a few years, and now she is the DC Bureau reporter. So welcoming everyone to Britt McHenry. Please give her applause.
Thank you. I think we have a very talented panel that you all will like today. And actually, if we can have the ladies come up here right now, get everyone situated and seated. It's been really exciting for me to meet some of you just having breakfast, and of course to talk to these esteemed professionals who will be joining me. So we'll let them get settled. And before we begin, we have a really cool video that will be playing momentarily from ESPNW. I just saw it yesterday, and as someone who geeks out with any, I'll be at a game reporting and they put the montage up for like the Capitals, playoffs are coming, I just stare and watch. So I love seeing stuff like this, and I think you guys are really going to like this video from ESPNW for Women's History Month.
To whom it may concern, what I'm doing here is not for you. Not for your judgment or your appraisal. Not for your assessment or your arousal. No boy I know has ever been told he shouldn't play, couldn't play. I am no longer interested in shouldn'ts or couldn'ts or rules not written for me. I am not worried about getting too big or too strong or too fast or too full of myself. I do not agree that playing like a man is a compliment. What I'm doing here is not for you. Movement is a movement. My effort, my ambition, my desire for me. For every woman, every girl who dares to see herself as something more than a body to be rated, a score to be kept. When I play, I keep my own score. When I play, I know who I am. When I play, I forget how it feels to be boxed in, to be boxed out. When I play, I feel no shame. When I play, I remember how it feels to be free. This court, this field, this world, too small to hold me. When I play, I know I won't be undone. I won't be unsung. My humility, my humanity, my movement, a movement. This is not the end of my dream. This is where I wake up.
There you go. It's a way to wake up for sure for all of us in here. I don't know if I can lift that much or, do quite what Serena does, but we're going to bring it here on the panel today. So I want to introduce you to everybody, and I think the best way will be to sort of go down the line and let you ladies get into more explanation of what you do, because nothing says passion like being able to speak on it yourself. So we'll start with Miriam Leger, Associate Director at ESPN with Around the Horn, And I got the pronunciation right, girl. We're chugging on. So please tell everyone a little bit about your background.
Good morning, ladies. How are you guys doing today? Good? Good. I'm glad that you guys could join us. My name is Miriam Lejeune. I'm the Associate Director at ESPN. For about 15 years now. We started with Around the Horn. I also do Pardon the Interruption. And we're based here in Washington, D.C.
Okay. And Tina?
Good morning. I'm Tina Thornton. I'm Senior Vice President of Production, Management Operations, and Multimedia Sponsorship Integration. I've been at ESPN 24 years this year. Right out of college, started as a production assistant and worked my way up. Have been primarily on the content side, but recently moved to the business side of things, and I'm sure we'll learn a little bit more about that as we go.
Good morning, ladies. I am Kelly Evans, the general editor for ESPN's The Undefeated. It's ESPN's new website on race, sports, and culture. And I came from ESPN.com in Bristol, where I worked on PageOne.com, the Now team, and here I bring you the good news. So I work on the uplift section to give you a little bit of a break from some of the serious news that you hear every day.
Good morning, ladies. My name is Danielle Cadet, like military cadet. I am also at The Undefeated. I'm a senior editor at on the team, and I oversee our daily editorial operations. I've been at ESPN for about 2.5 years, and prior to that, I was the editor at the Huffington Post Black Voices.
So as you can see, very accomplished group here. I'm just so proud to be on the stage with all of you. And I want to direct a question, first of all, and we'll get questions from you guys as well at the end for anything that arises and you want to already ask maybe right now, or you'll hear, or you'll want to after hearing everyone. But Miriam, what struck me, we'll start with you, is you're with such a successful company, obviously, and television show with Around the Horn for 15 years. But like anything, in its infancy, who knows what would have happened? So what made you take that leap of faith in your career?
So I would say I started at CBS Sports. I was there a total of 22 years. There was some crossover. But I would say that in the beginning, it was just the desire to take a chance. And I think that's something that you guys, you're going to have to, at some point, you're going to have to kind of face your fears. And that will continue. Tina and I were having a conversation. You're going to have to say, okay, I've done this. What else can I do? And it's one of the things that's important to me is that as you go through your journey, it's something that you can always connect to with someone else. You're going to need to know what that facing your fear is. So when I had been at CBS for a number of years, and when we started with Around the Horn, it was a brand new show. I mean, they had an idea, and so they brought a team of us together. And they thought it was actually not going to do well at first. Thought it was a weird idea, so we stuck with it. We had a really great team. We believed in each other, but there's always the potential for it not working. But you have to have enough confidence in yourself that even if it doesn't, what it will give you will propel you for the next thing, because there's really no bad choice. There's, lessons learned from any choice. So I would say that.
And Tina, you were nodding your head on that one about facing your fear. How did you have to face your fear to, and some backstory as well on how you rose up through the company? Yeah,
I started in the event production group, meaning I worked on live events all growing up, worked on everything from college football, college basketball. I think I was the first woman on the NFL on our event coverage. Did the X Games, did a variety of different things, came up through the ranks, was a coordinating producer, oversaw a lot of our NCAA championships, and then there was a point in time that some of my events were going away, and my boss at the time said to me, hey, I can give you some more events and some more sports. He said, but I could really use your help with sales. And I thought, ugh, that's terrible. When you're a content or an editorial person, sales is the thing you don't even want to think about, right? Even though it does generate revenue. And so it ended up that at the time I was traveling 35, 40 weeks a year, and I knew I wanted to have a family, and I thought, you know what, let me try this out. And I negotiated at the time, well, if I take this on, can I still keep some of my content? And they allowed me to do that, which was great. So it felt like I still had an opportunity to go back to what I was doing if this didn't work out. And I took a risk and I took a big chance and moved into this business side of things. And I'm so glad I did. It broadened my entire career. It broadened my portfolio, and it helped me get out of my silo and meet so many more people at the company. And it was extremely important to me at the time. And I'm appreciative that they wanted me to do that. And I will tell you, the first year was awful. I hated it. But I stuck with it and realized that they saw a skill in me that maybe I didn't see in myself at that point in time, and that was a real positive, and it really helped propel me into what I do now. And this is the first year that I'm actually giving up content entirely and focusing on the business side of my job.
And Tina, you were saying, because we have some college students here in the audience, that you started at ESPN right out of Wake Forest and have been there ever since. What kind of fears or reservations did you have initially, again, given we have some very young ladies in this audience, for going to such a big company that early on?
At the time, it wasn't a big company.
That's true.
Think about
That's
it.
true.
But I will say, I started in August of 1993. Graduated in May of 93, started in August of 93, came in with a lot of other people at the time to help launch ESPN2. Imagine, we didn't have anything except ESPN at that point in time. And so came in to help launch ESPN2, and it's funny, when I was coming out of college, you've got this confidence, and it was like, I could do anything. And I said, I'm going to be at ESPN for a year, and then I'm out of here, and I'm going to go work at the NFL, or I'm going to go work at, all these other places, or work for the Olympics, or whatever it might be. But I was really happy. When I got there, I realized, wow, this has so much potential and so much opportunity, and I was never bored. It's been 24 years, and I've never been bored in anything that I've done, and I think that is what's extremely important, is that you want to continue to grow every single day in what you're doing, and you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to learn from everything, but it's extremely important that you continue to grow over time.
And it's just remarkable for me to hear people thought Around the Horn was going to fail. Oh, yeah. And at the time, it wasn't a big company. And think about that. The same can be said for your careers, our careers, that you can be more than what you want to be. And I think this applies to both genders, obviously to everyone, but especially as a woman. I mean, raise your hand in this audience if at some point someone told you you couldn't do something, or maybe you should shy away from sports because there's other options for you. I mean, I certainly, yeah. And look at them now. So, my first year, I was 22. I somehow convinced them at WJLA to give me a job, but I was a community reporter. I had to shoot my own stuff. I had to edit my own stuff. I was driving a little Ford Focus. Still love that thing. I'd bump some Jay-Z in it and make a lot of people laugh. But it was awful. Like you said, the first year going into the workforce might be terrible, and especially if you want to do something in sports, in media. But you get those phone calls to somebody you trust and you love, my mom, every week, maybe some glasses of red wine every week, and you get through it. And I wanted to relay that as well, because I think sometimes you see these great women on the panel, you see me moderating it, a lot of people think I was just plucked and put on a football field one day. And it doesn't happen. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into it, especially for women in this industry. So just wanted to add that. Now, Kelly, you covered the Grizzlies in Memphis. So
Yes.
what was that experience like, and then what was the jumping point to join the Undefeated?
It was very hard for me. I'm a Southern girl by heart. For me, my path was a little different. I started a family first, so I finished college a little bit later. I have a 23-year-old daughter now, so my path to sports started with a small community paper. I worked my way through college. I didn't have the big internships because I worked a full-time job to support my daughter, so that was it. I started small. I stayed there for 10 years covering the NBA. At the time, there were only a handful of female NBA beat reporters. Most of the women in the business were broadcast news or PR. So it was eye-opening at the time. Stayed there 10 years. There was a position available as a general editor on the .com team. My daughter went to college. I really didn't have a reason to stay at the small market at a small paper. So that's when I began to think about my life in broader horizons. And ESPN called in 3 days, and they were very interested in some of the things I brought to the table. And I would say don't shy away from some of the small papers if you aren't, or the small digital news outlets, if you aren't getting the big calls right now. Because the thing about that is you get to wear a lot of hats. So you get a lot of experience under your belt. After year 5, 6 for me, I had a dual role as a digital media manager, and I was able to increase the traffic on our company's website. The paper was 65 years old. It was an alternative paper. I increased the company's website. I doubled it, almost tripled it. So that got me some extra looks in the new media world, in the digital journalism world. And that's what ESPN was interested in at the time. So it's a hustle. Sports is a hustle. Sometimes you have to create your own opportunities because it's so broad. So don't be afraid of that. Don't shy away from it because it will work out for you.
And it's so true in terms of the more you can do, the better off you will be. This was just in a call 2 weeks ago for all the bureau reporters and producers we have at ESPN that it's not good enough anymore to just be good on TV. And that, I'm not too young anymore, I'm 30, but I always felt like the young kid. And even now, there's so many more social media platforms are rising. We did Instagram stories and social takeovers for the NFL Combine. A couple years ago, if someone said that's your assignment, I would have been like, what? Are you serious? 1 million views on all of the social platforms we use to relay content. So if you can get behind a camera, your iPhone, go on your blog, write, do as much as you can, building your own brand as well, and then for the next destination you go to, it's gonna make you so much more marketable in this place. And especially, again, as women, sometimes you gotta fight for that extra edge, and that's what I've certainly found. But speaking of fighting for that edge, Danielle, I would love to just talk about Northwestern. Beating Gonzaga didn't really happen.
Yes.
They fought.
They fought hard, very hard.
They did. You have 2 degrees, correct, from
I do.
Northwestern?
Yes.
See, I only have 1. She's just killing it over here. Similar to what we were just talking about in terms of your choice and decision to then be such a powerful director and editor at the Undefeated.
So I was at Black Voices for 3 years, and I was actually just speaking with Tina about this yesterday. I was very happy there, and I was there during the time that I would consider really sort of the origins of what bubbled into the Black Lives Matter movement. So I was there right at the very beginning of the Trayvon Martin investigation and eventually the George Zimmerman trial, and all the way through, actually right the week before my last day, the Ferguson, Michael Brown got shot. And so it was an incredible experience, and I learned so much. And to the point about wearing a lot of different hats, I came there as an associate editor, and as things changed around at the company, I eventually got promoted to editor of the section. I had a small team of editors, and it was a lot of responsibility. I started working there when I was 23 or 24. And it was, within a year and a half, I was running a section that got, at the time, over 40% of Huffington Post traffic at one point. And so it was an incredible responsibility, and it was a little scary. And I do think that is what encouraged me to actually come to the Undefeated, because when the opportunity came up, I am actually technically the first person that was ever hired at the Undefeated, and came on board before our current editor-in-chief. So that's my claim to fame. And I make sure he remembers that all the time. But when I received when ESPN reached out to me about it, I was terrified. The job was in Los Angeles. I was in New York. I'm from New York. I was in a very comfortable place. I lived 10 minutes away from my grandparents. If I didn't feel like making dinner, I could make a right off the train and go get some food, like a home cooked meal. So I was great, and I had been at HuffPost for 3 years. I was really comfortable. I felt supported there by my colleagues and my manager. And so this opportunity terrified me. I would have to pick up and move across the country. I knew no one in LA. And that's actually why I took it. I was scared of it, but it was such an incredible opportunity to really take what I was doing at the Huffington Post and take it to the next level. I'll be honest, I don't have a sports background. My background is really in minority communities and speaking to and for communities of color. So I was very nervous about coming into a sports journalism, coming onto a sports journalism platform. I'm a fan, I love sports, but I don't have a sports journalism background. So I was very nervous about that, but all of those things combined and just thinking about the potential for the Undefeated, and it's so incredible to hear Miriam say that people thought Around the Horn was not going to be anything, because I certainly lived through the time when people didn't even think the Undefeated was going to get off the ground. So to be here at this moment, and for every day, for me to wake up and think about, what are we doing today? How can I help the Undefeated be great every single day, which is really my core responsibility, is to make sure that the trains are running on time, that we're in communication with folks that we need to be in communication with, that our stories are getting up in a timely manner and getting out the way they need to, whether that's on social media or on espn.com and so on and so forth. To be able to do that and to be able to strategize about who we are and where we're going, it's incredible to look back at being at HuffPost and being that very terrified woman who didn't know what was going to happen, and at times was afraid that I made the wrong decision. It's so fulfilling to be at a point now where, we're almost a year old and we've had a whirlwind of a year, and I tell people that it's exhausting, but it's incredibly exhilarating.
And, covering the Trayvon Martin case, that's so publicized, so heavy. How did you find that balance? And I ask that because this is what the Undefeated deals with, and this is where our culture is right now, with societal issues, meeting sports figures, and I think sometimes there's oversharing, and sometimes, in my position as a journalist, I'm like, I have opinions, how do I weigh it, how do I not? So how do you find that balance with your staff?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, for me, it was very much about, I had to learn the difference, right? Because Huffington Post is a different company and a different atmosphere from ESPN. And I think a conversation that we always have at the Undefeated is, it's very difficult, especially as a person of color, when sometimes you really do feel like you have skin in the game. Like, a lot of what is happening, affects people that look like you and could very potentially affect you on any given day. So it is very difficult sometimes to separate your personal, the personal aspect from your professional aspect. I think at the end of the day, and I would probably say that I learned this at Medill, is to really lean on the journalism, to really lean on the reporting and the information to tell the story. I think that in addition to being in such a fascinating period of time right now as far as social justice conversations and race and culture and sports and the intersection of those things are concerned, we're also at this point where we're really having a conversation about our industry and how much people trust us as journalists. And I think the only response to that is to do your job and do it well. And so with that said, you have to take yourself out of it. I do think the important thing about the Undefeated is that it's coming from a very, very authentic perspective. And that, to me, is the advantage of having a niche site that's run by majority African American staff, because we have very natural conversations that inform our reporting and inform our storytelling. And we're in our newsroom very regularly talking about how these things affect us as individuals, and then we talk about, okay, what's the story behind it? What's the journalism behind it? So I do think that you have to take yourself out of it, but there's a balance, because sometimes having that personal perspective helps inform the story, but I do think you have to take it out. You have to take yourself out of it and let the reporting tell that story, because I think there's so much out there where people aren't doing that, and at this juncture, I think people really trust when they hear the facts, and we got to give readers credit sometimes and let them come to their own conclusions rather than pushing them somewhere. So I think that's really, and I do feel like I learned that at Medill, so go Cats.
Yeah, just get as many shout outs as we can right now. But no, that's interesting even for me to hear too on this panel, because it's such a climate right now. What's your take? What's your take? What's your take? And it makes for great TV, which will segue me to my next question. But I think it's important to keep yourself checked, keep yourself informed, and maybe even pull back a little bit, because I certainly have on some of my platforms. I mean, we all see crazy stuff in the news right now, and it's just like, let's talk to some others before I tweet. I've had to learn that the hard way, but it's very, very good information. So, Miriam, that brings me to, I love Around the Horn. I love the different hot takes, but what I've noticed in the past year is there have been more female voices. How much of a factor have you been in setting that up?
So I will say I had nothing to do with it. I would say,
or encouraging it, I'm sure.
Absolutely nothing. I think it's just what's happening culturally, what's happening in our world. I think women are more confident in general. I think the way we show up for ourselves. What I will say is I'm in a control room setting primarily. I, like Tina, started in live sports, love live sports, very different being in a control room. But I'm in a control room where I am the only woman in my control room. Wow. And it's all men. So, and that's the control room. And the newsroom is slightly different, unlike your newsroom, which has a lot more diversity in terms of men and women. But what I will say is who you are is who shows up. So while I'm sure all of you want to, it's important to connect with people, I would say mentors are extremely important. If you don't do anything else, you should connect with someone that you love, trust, and respect, who can say, that's not a good idea, you're going in the wrong direction. You're gonna need that, especially in this climate. But when you need to work on yourself, because when you show up, you're there. So this is the time that you have to mold yourself and have great interactions with people. But when I walk into a control room, I'm a sum total of my experiences. So while I'm not writing directly, while I don't have to be as careful because I'm not writing columns, or I think Tina gets the opportunity to really speak to vast audiences. So I'm just in that control room, but I'm making a difference because I show up as a woman. My parents are Haitian, so I speak multiple languages. I'm a mother, so that person shows up. So whenever there's a topic on Around the Horn, and again, I sit in the front and the producing team sits in the back. It's the nature of the way the control room is set up. And something comes across, whether it affects me as a woman or a mother or a person of color, I am comfortable enough because they've created that climate to say, you can't say that. That's inappropriate. Or sometimes they'll say, what do you think about that? That's also happened. So so women are now more on the scene, and we had once, I think, all women on our panel. It was a really big deal. And it was exciting because it wasn't a big deal. And that's the point. It shouldn't be a big deal. Maybe the first time, but at the point where people are tweeting or people on their Instagram saying, yeah, this is great, it's all women. That's great at first, but then it should just be normal. And the way that the men and women interact on our show, it's amazing. It's just about their respect. It's about their answer, and they absolutely lift one another up.
It's fascinating. I wanted to add value to that because I fortunately have had a lot of great mentors, most of them men along the way. And one of my biggest advocates was my producer on Sunday Night Football when I did the NFL. He's now the producer on Sunday Night Football for NBC. His name's Fred Godelli. He's great. And he, at the time, I was very young. I think I was 25 or so, 24, 25. And he said to me, I was working college football, and that was my sport, and I loved college football. And he said to me, hey, I'm going to pull you onto the NFL. And I thought, yeah, I don't really like the NFL. I don't really know the NFL. I'm college, you know? And he said, no, I want you on the NFL. And I said, look, I just don't know as much as these other folks. It was all guys. Like, I think I was the only woman in the event production department at that point in time, one of very few, if any. And I said, are you sure? And he said, I've got lots of people that know tons about the NFL. I don't have anybody that's going to bring something different to the table. And that was really bizarre because that was my first experience with diversity in a way. I don't even know if he really knew what that was, or the terminology was not a buzzword at that point in time. But he selected me because he knew I was bringing something different to the table. And I didn't feel like it was because I was a woman. I felt like it was because he knew I was just different than the other people. And that was super important.
A funny story with Fred Godelli, he's one of the architects in this business, a very powerful man, again, now at Sunday Night Football with NBC. Look, here's another thing, and this could be a whole nother topic, but again, touching on social media everywhere, I've made a mistake publicly, and I thought my world was going to crash down, and I got this handwritten note one day in the mail after that happened, about a month after it happened. And, here I am. I'm new, relatively still. At least I feel that way to the business. I see Southington, Connecticut. I'm thinking it's someone at ESPN. And it is this beautifully written, long, handwritten note from Fred Godelli. Never met him. Such a powerful man in the business. And he took time out to say, listen, you can get through this. It's not about your mistake. It's about how you overcome your mistake. So just to add on to, it's not just the mentors. We can all be that in this room if you want to connect with us later. It's not the mentors you make. Sometimes there really are good people in this business and they'll reach out to you. And that was an example, or calling you up to take on a new challenge.
I'm sorry, I just want to add one thing. What's really important there, and there are men, and I would say my mentors were mostly men because there were really no women at the time. But I would say fight the urge to make yourself important. Fight the urge. One of my bosses said to me, I was going to be on a platform, and he said, you already have the job, right? We've given you the job. You need to do nothing else to prove that you deserve this job. You have it. And you have to be very careful because we're in a society where we constantly feel like we have to prove ourselves. But that creates another issue, is what it ends up doing. So you show up, you don't have to be arrogant. There's arrogance and confidence. But just know when they give you the opportunity, when the company says, we trust you, or when your boss said, I see this in you, you have it. So walk in that instead of constantly trying to prove yourself, because it really gets exhausting for people to have to constantly tell you it's okay. And I had to do that with a very famous male coworker of mine who is, very famous now, announcer. And I remember we were working together, and I saw him explaining himself at his level. And I had to take him to the side and say, you got the gig already, right? They gave you the gig. And for me to see this in a male counterpart, I said, wow, this is a human element, because some things are just human, right? Everyone gets scared, everyone gets overwhelmed, and that's where I have connected the most with my male, my male colleagues. I know you're afraid right now, I know, but I've been there. And everyone needs encouragement. That's where you can always connect with people. Everyone needs encouragement, so.
And, and now kind of going to you, Kelly, with beat reporting with the Grizzlies. On a good day, you all, probably it's still going to be 80% men in a locker room or clubhouse. It will be. And I certainly have a boatload of stories on that. Don't know if we have time for all of them, but I wanted to hear from you. What have you experienced along the way? And did you ever have moments where you thought, I'm so outnumbered, or a male colleague made a snide comment when you broke a story? Or, did any of that happen, and did you have to persevere through it?
Absolutely. Like you said, there are tons of stories I can tell, but one that stands out, maybe year 6 in, the Grizzlies were playing the Detroit Pistons. So the opposing team beat writers were in one room and the home beat writers were in another room finishing our story so we could file on deadline to our editors. So after we were all leaving at the same time, and one of their reporters told me, "Thank you so much for those quotes that you gave us." And I'm like, excuse me? He said, "You're an intern, right?" Oh. I'm like, "No, I'm a beat writer. I just filed my story to my editor same way you did. As a matter of fact, I think I had a paper in my bag." I was like, "Take my paper and read my page one story, please, above the fold." So he was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And I stopped for a moment and I had to question myself. During that time, I was the only female beat writer in the room. There were a couple of broadcast journalists, and I say a couple. The rest were men. And I was like, am I presenting an intern? You know I have the soft voice, so maybe that's it. But I put it on pause for a second, and I said, I'll take it. It's a compliment. Maybe he's saying I look a little younger than I am. So, I'll take the intern, and I'll prove myself differently. So what I did at that point, I started to do more stories that included the opposing team's locker room. So I knew I could get a quote from Kobe that no one else could probably get because he's going to be nice to women where he may not be so nice to some of the guys. I knew I could get those quotes from Carmelo Anthony when big things happen, and I knew it didn't have to be about the game. I could say after everyone's done, "Excuse me, I have a non-game related story. May I please ask?" Sure. So I could get those things, and I can formulate a story that was not so much post-game. So I was able to become more known for that. Some of the opposing PR team members would contact me to find out did you get that on tape? Can you send me the audio of the quote that you got? We read your story because of course, the Google Analytics where they get the names. So I was able to persevere through that, and I was able to turn something that could have been negative into something that was positive to help me. It made me see, well, let me make sure I'm in the opposing locker room the next time Detroit comes so they can see me asking those questions for my story that the interns just aren't holding a a tape recorder to the mouth of the players. So I persevered by just turning that into more of a positive situation to see, well, how can I combat that negativity?
Yeah.
So it didn't linger long. I wasn't, oh my God, he thinks I'm an intern. Should I put bass in my voice? What should I do? But I didn't let it get me down, and I turned it into something positive. So now, if I see the LeBrons or some of the guys that you all know, they'll say, "Hey, how's it going? How's Memphis?" And I can say, "I'm not there anymore." So it's a good conversation to have. It changed the narrative for me.
Yeah, and just quick add on to that, baseball, every sport's different, right? Baseball is a bit old-fashioned at times, and I remember this was 5 years ago. I was really young, and I'm in the San Diego Padres clubhouse, and it's second day. I thought I was going to permanently take this job. I'm across country, never been to Petco Park. I'm just trying to meet the guys to start a beat, and I get pulled aside later that afternoon by an older white man, executive, and he said, that was really disappointing. I go, what? He's like, I was told that you laughed, you giggled. That could send a bad impression, because you're a female in the clubhouse. You need to be taken seriously. And I just was like, what? You can have two men laughing, talking about what bars they went to with the players, and that I just felt in the moment defeated because why should, I make friends. I laugh with all of you over conversation. But like you said, you shake it off and just know that that's going to be there and go back in. I went back in and I talked to more players and got a story the next day. And you just can't, it's just sad because stuff like that will still happen. You may get asked, are you the intern? Don't laugh. And I'd love to say 2017, we're so past that, but it still happens with women, so you have to persevere. Now, you mentioned you were at a turning point, or the Undefeated was as well, where you're not only going to deal with maybe a gender bias, as we talked about, but negativity of whether it was going to take off. So how did you take on a leadership role and all that? Any stories?
Okay. So that was. So I'll give a little bit of a timeline. So I came on board at ESPN in October of 2014. And that was when I moved to LA. And at the time, my boss's name was Jason Whitlock. Some of you may have heard of him before. And he was originally appointed to be the editor-in-chief of the site. And so in the very beginning, I was working with the fantastic folks on the product team who we still work with to this day, who were putting the site together. We were talking about the editorial direction for the site. At the time, the site was not even named The Undefeated, which I sometimes forget. And so we were thinking of a name for the site. We were thinking of, everything right down to what colors would be on the site. It was very exciting. It really, very literally building something from scratch. Which for me was exciting. It was so amazing to get in on something on the ground level. And so we were developing a budget and developing a staff and the whole nine. It was really incredible. Came up with a great name. We went back and forth on names for a little while. And it was just really, really exciting. So we did that for quite some time. And in June of 2015, Jason got taken off of the project. And there's a lot that happened in between there, and I'm going to save that for my book, so don't ask. Or take it to the grave, but book pays off more, so I think I'll do that. So in June of 2015, Jason got taken off of the project. And I remember him calling me and telling me, and I do remember thinking at that moment, like, I've made the worst decision of my professional career. I picked up and moved, and I left a really great job, and now I'm in the middle of LA. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what's going to happen with this site. I was terrified, and I didn't really know what to do. And up until that point, I had really tried to meet as many people as I could. I went to Bristol several times. I went to the New York office, I went to the DC office. I just tried to meet people. I met Miriam. And I just tried to meet people and develop really great relationships. And I developed a really fantastic relationship with Marie Donahue, who is actually an SVP and is over Exit 31, which is our department. And she was an incredible, she provided such great support for me and was like, don't be afraid. We're going to figure this out. And it wasn't just lip service. Like, she actually was like, we are going to figure this out. Not only for the site, but for you, because we see your value and we really believe in you. And that was very motivating for me. And in the interim, we had great content. We had great writers. And so I said, well, this stuff needs a home. And we had pegged it to anniversaries. There were a lot of things that were going on that I didn't just want to see sort of go by the wayside. And so I started doing some research, and I had met some really great people in Bristol, including Patricia Mays, who at the time worked on .com. And I just reached out to people and I said, hey, we've got great content. I know the site's not up yet, but how can we get our stuff on .com? And I started working with people who worked on .com, and we got things published, and I became sort of that liaison for this sort of interim Undefeated team, and I became the person that people saw as the point person between our team and the ESPN.com team. I had no idea how long that was going to last, and so we just did that as our writers were frustrated, we were frustrated, we at least wanted to see our work published. And so I figured out a way to work that out, and I just kind of got scrappy about it. I really just emailed as many people as I could and made phone calls and, just tried to capitalize on the relationships that I had developed. This is also another thing that I like to brag about. I sort of recruited our current editor-in-chief because I got invited to a Washington Post dinner at the National Association of Black Journalists Conference. And I had still had my incredible relationship with Marie, and Marie said to me, Danielle, if you can think of any great candidates for EIC, let me know. And I said, well, you know, I have heard about this man. His name is Kevin Merida. I think he's kind of a good guy, you know. I think he kind of knows what he's doing. And I'm actually going to be at dinner with him in a couple of weeks. And so I went to that dinner. I was very nervous. And Kevin sat right across from me. And my goal, if I'm being completely honest, because I did not know what was going to happen, was either to get him to come to the Undefeated or to get him to hire me at the Washington Post. so I just went in there and put on a happy face, and I was like, I work for the Undefeated, and I'm so excited. We had no idea what was going to happen. But and everyone at that time, because there was a lot of stuff in the news, I don't know if you guys heard about it, and a lot of people were like, whoa, like, what's going on with you? Like, the Undefeated, like, that must be a little embarrassing to say. But I just tried to have confidence and tried to say, like, I think it's really exciting what we're doing. Nobody's doing what we're doing. And I know we haven't gotten off the ground yet, but we have so much potential. And then I tried to inconspicuously go up to Kevin afterward, and I got coffee with him. And I asked him to coffee, and we got coffee a couple of days later and had a fantastic conversation. And at the end of the conversation, he said, I'm either going to come to the Undefeated or I'm going to bring you to the Post. And I was like, mission accomplished! And from there, Kevin and I stayed in touch. He asked, you know, I gave him as much information as I could. I put him in touch with Marie. He eventually had conversations with Marie Donahue and John Skipper and just a ton of people. And he called me one day and he said, I'm thinking about taking the job, but I cannot take the job unless you're in DC. Everybody has told me that you are the person who got things published. You are the person who kept, you know, everyone's head above water in this interim time period, and so I need you in DC. I need you. How do you feel? He's like, I know it's not the same weather as LA. And on the inside, I was like, what? Of course. Like, but I was a little, he says I was coy about it, and that I was like, well, I guess so. I packed up my stuff so quickly, and I moved to DC in a second, and, you know, never looked back. I do think, you know, I was a little defeated at points when we did not know what was going on, but there was, I thank Marie eternally for her support, but there was just a part of me that just decided to make lemonade out of lemons. I mean, we really didn't have anything. We didn't have a site. We didn't have anything up. We had a logo, and I just tried to find a way to slap our logo on .com with our stories just so that we could still get our stuff out there. We had incredible work, and to let it just never see the light of day to me was really sad. And so I just got as scrappy as I could and tried to figure it out, and it really paid off. And it really actually helped me develop the role that I have today, because I do, to this day, still sort of occupy this place where I'm really the liaison between our editorial team and the folks over on .com, making sure that we're communicating to promote our stories on .com. We get a ton of traffic from espn.com. So that turned into the job that I have today, and I wouldn't take that back for the world.
But that initiative, going on Sunday Night Football, when you were on college basketball, taking on a show in its infancy, moving to DC when you dominated Memphis, I mean, these are all stories of, like, being aggressive and being courageous when you need to be. And don't be afraid. Every job I've had, you know, after that interview, anybody I know with connections, they're emailing, they're calling. The first job I got, the little community reporter job, which led to everything, was because the news director from Northwestern, there we go, there's another one.
Go Cats.
Just said later on, like a year later, he laughed and he's like, it was like the base lowest salary job. It was an entry level job. We had candidates, 3 that we were going to offer the job to with so much more experience than you. But he's like, gosh darn it, you just annoyed me so much. And I said, nobody's gonna want that job as much as her. So again, reach out to people you know, build those connections, and create something even if you don't think it's gonna be there, or in the meantime, is really great advice. I wanna open it up to you guys as well. Does anyone have any questions for any of the panelists? Sure.
I have a question. It can be for
Yeah.
anyone.
Yeah.
jump in. That was, I'd honestly say that's something I'm still learning about, and like that I honestly have been told from mentors to never stop learning, because people are different, and people require different types of management styles. It's definitely something that I try to think about every day because I am a relatively young manager, and I think one thing that was a little intimidating for me was managing someone that was older than me, or people that had more experience than me or had been in the business longer. I try to meet people where they are and to really have open conversation with people, but to be very clear about direction. I try to give what it is that I appreciate from a manager. And I do think, I love that you mentioned managing up as well, because that is something that I think about every day. A lot of it, I think, for me, comes from how I carry myself and how I take on my responsibilities. I think a lot of it has to do with really providing an example. I think that helps people respect you so much more than saying, like, you have to do this because I'm your boss. For me, so much of that, especially because I'm hyper conscious of my age at times, I try to lead by example and not so much lead with an iron fist. And that has helped me exponentially, and it's helped really open up a place where I feel like people on my team have just come to me naturally without me having to say, you have to do this because I'm your boss. I think that has been the best. And I'm a very new manager. So I think as a new manager, I really learned how much I respect the people around me, and I respect my own managers. And so I've taken a little bit of that and said, okay, this is what I want. I want to emulate this, or I want to change this, or I want to fix this. I want to be more communicative. I want to be transparent. But I do want to provide an example so that I don't necessarily have to, I say you have to do this, but more so that you respect what I'm saying because you see how I carry myself.
Let me just jump in here. I heard a quote the other day, and I love quotes. I just kind of have them everywhere, and I have them on my phone. They come constantly just to remind me, to balance me. I heard something the other day, and I'm paraphrasing, listen without defending, speak without offending. So when you're going to approach someone, I say always speak from a place of respect. And you have to think about what is it that you want to get across to this person. So I always try to connect with people personally. Again, Danielle said management styles. You have to decide who you are, and you have to come in your own skin. So and again, when you're speaking to people above you, or whether it's people that you manage, I like to connect with people first. Let them know, yes, you are valuable to me, and it's because you're valuable to me that I'm concerned about this particular area. So you list your concern first, wherever they are, above or below the line. And then you say, how can I help you get to this place? So it's not that I just need this of you, it's that I'm in this with you. And you want to see them excel. You want to see them do better. So that it's not just about you. I have a stake in you doing well, because your excellence is tied to mine. The better you do, the better we all do. So this is what I would get wrapped around your head before you even go to speak to them. But usually what we do, just as people, when someone is giving us constructive criticism, you're not listening, you're coming up with an argument. You're defending automatically. That's why I always say, work on yourself first, because when you show up, this is really who you are. So, and then when you go to, you're listening, you're defending, and then when you're going to speak to someone, what you're doing is you're not really addressing what they've said. You're going to get them back for whatever you felt, whatever they gave to you. So you have to take that around. And let's say they've given you something. Let's say that person hasn't. Let's turn it around. Let's say I'm speaking to you, and you, now the employee, have to speak back to me. You can turn around and say, I'm sorry that you feel so offended by what I've done, but that's not what I'm trying to get at. And you as the person, if you're the manager, you have to normalize the situation. You have to bring calm. You have to assess. If you see in that moment that person is kind of, upset, it's not the right time. You don't do it in front of other people. your point is to get the point across, not to put them down. So it's a constant assessing, constant getting to know people. And also, people should never only hear from you when you have a problem. You have to lift them up constantly. And if you do that, I guarantee you, before you have a problem, they'll come to you and say, I can see the look on your face, you've got a problem. And that's the best way to manage, I would say that.
The only other thing that I would add, because they've pretty much summed up exactly what I would say, the only thing I would add would be that I look at myself as a head coach, and every player is slightly different, and every teammate is slightly different, and they're going to act and react differently based upon how and what you say. So back to the management styles, I'm always transparent, which is extremely important, and yet at the same time, I try to learn people's styles so that I know how they will react based upon what I say at any given point in time. And that goes for up and down. That goes for managing your, GM versus also managing your peers versus also managing, those players that work for you, those teammates that work for you. And you really need to think about it that way. And that's where I've been very successful in managing a team, is making sure that I don't I treat everybody fairly, but it doesn't mean you have to treat or deal with everybody the exact same way.
That's a great question and great answers. Anyone else have any questions? Yeah.
No one doesn't have an experience yet. When you're discussing being scrappy, how would we be scrappy without being either too much or not doing enough? Where do you find that perfect balance of scrappy?
That's a good question. Do you all want to?
Okay, so since I'm the one that used that word or expression. I do think there is a balance. I think, Brett, you made a great point about just letting people know that you're there, and understanding that everyone's very busy, right? Everyone has so much on their plate, and so I think it's difficult because people have priorities and people have things in front of them. And I always tell people, I think this is the thing about journalists, is we forget things that are not in front of our faces. I get emails and I will turn and then I'll be like, oh, I forgot about this email, So I do think it's very important to put yourself in front of somebody or to send an email. But I also think that you have to bring something to the table. I do think the thing about being scrappy is not so much asking for a favor as it is creating a solution for someone. Try to figure out what is this person, how can I help this person? Because it's difficult when you don't want to be the person that's hey, you can help me, right? I think you can also be the person that's here's something that I can do that might make your life a little bit easier. That's honestly something that I would pay attention to. I think it's really being genuine and being authentic, not just reaching out when you need something, but just developing a relationship. Delayed gratification is a really important thing to remember. We live in a world where you get everything automatically. You post a picture, you get a like. You send an email, you get a response. You call an Uber, they're coming in 2 minutes. But I think the difference professionally is sometimes you put something out there, it's not going to pay off for a long time, but it will pay off. And I think being authentic about it and nurturing a relationship is also part of being scrappy, because sometimes I think people have an expectation that you will come to them when you need something, but when you just come to someone and say, I just want to get coffee and connect with you and learn about your career trajectory and just kind of soak up the knowledge that you have, not because I'm trying to get anything, just because I'm really trying to get to know you and understand you, I really think that resonates with people differently. And again, that helps you understand how you can be helpful to that person and what keeps that person awake at night. And to be able to say, hey, I have these skills that might be helpful. And one day that person is thinking about all of the problems he or she has and will think, I met that really great young woman who had these skills and was really authentic and things like that. So it's a balance between really keeping yourself in front of someone's face, but being very authentic about it and being genuine about it, and really presenting what you can bring to the table, and not so much asking for something, but also saying, I can be helpful to you in these ways.
Yeah, and I think to go with that, it's funny to be on both ends. We all were when you're trying to get into this business. And to now have people come up to me, it's we're all trying to help each other out. But when you see that, I always kind of laugh if a man or a woman come up to me and their eyes are scanning the room, who else can I talk to? You want the genuine interest, and then the mentorship grows. And what I would recommend is sort of having a plan of attack. Like when I graduated, I go through your alumni's database. Go, I mean, this was dorky, but I literally was going on every local news team's site, seeing their bios, who went here, and I was fortunate to meet Mike Wilbon, who's right next door in a couple hours. He went to Northwestern. He loves, alumni. You'd be surprised at how welcoming your alums will be to you. And he just became an invaluable friend, first and foremost, and I say that to him all the time. And then obviously helped me and gave a call when I was up for my job. So yeah, be genuine, have a plan of attack. And the one thing I would say is don't just cold call people, because when that happens to me, like, develop something. Like, we met, we exchanged cards, don't just call someone, because that's I don't know if y'all. Yeah.
Yeah. And to add to that, I would say to be ready to catch the curveball. Nothing, I won't say nothing, but a lot of things aren't going to come to you as planned. You can have this plan from A to Z for your life. You could have this plan from A to Z for your day. But if you are not prepared, if that doesn't happen, then you won't be able to function as properly as you would if you were to plan for curveballs as well. So look for it, be prepared for it, and that's one thing that will teach you how to become that scrappy person and will give you that easy medium of in between, because hey, this is what's going on, this is who I'm going to go to, this is what's happening right now, this is what I'm going to do, this is my plan. But you could get there and that person could be out sick. It could be anything. So be prepared to catch those curveballs, because we all know that's happened in life. You just never know. So be prepared for that. And that humility will teach you how to become naturally that scrappy person, because you can easily flip a switch and handle problems. Like I had a conversation with Danielle yesterday, and when you have so much experience under your belt, there's so many ways that you can contribute to a team. And I'm that scrappy one. If content is slow, I'm like, well, I got 10 stories in my back pocket. Which one do you want? That just comes from covering a beat. I always have a story in mind. I'm always watching trends. I'm always knowing what's going on. I always plan for the next week with stories that I think about. And that's scrappy. You are prepared for what's happening. You are prepared for what's not happening. So just keep that in mind. Have that plan of attack ready, and have that plan ready if the what ifs. And just be prepared for the what ifs.
I'm sorry, I don't know what scrappy means. I don't know, and I don't think I want to know what scrappy means. It's a millennial word, I know that. And I have a 20-year-old, so I'm going to ask her, don't tell me, I want to hear her take on it. But I will say this, I don't know, and one of you on this panel may say this is the case. I have yet to meet someone other than Derek Jeter who said, I will play for the Yankees, and did.
Yeah.
Who said, this is my life, and this is the way it's going to be.
Such a good
And
point.
when you look back, you'll say, I'm glad this is not the way it turned out, because I had this in mind. But if you set some goals like, I'm going into the workforce, this is really what I think I want to do. And trust me, it's only what you think you want to do until you're doing what you were meant to do. And you lay out some goals. I want a job that challenges me. I want a job where I can support myself. I want a job that is exciting to go to. I want a job that at least helps me to meet interesting people. And that you can say yes to those basic goals, then you're doing well. You're moving forward. I don't have a sports background, and I was an opera major. That is the furthest thing, I was and I played music my whole life. I thought I was going to be a singer, and I was a pianist. I thought that was going to be great, and then I discovered broadcasting in college. When I went and I visited, I went to New York, did the whole New York thing, and I said, this is not good. This doesn't end well. For most of these, and they did can you sing like Whitney Houston? Do I look like I can sing like, no, I can't sing like Whitney. No, so I realize they keep pigeonholing you. So it doesn't have to be sports. It can be music. They're always trying to put you in a box. That's that's everywhere all the time. And I said, you know what? My grandmother said, those grandmothers, you love to talk. Why don't you go on television or something? And when I was in college, I said, you know what? I just checked communications and had no idea where I was going. But later on in my life, besides sports, I started doing entertainment. And now I can be a music AD or music director, having nothing to do with that. So it provided something years before that I said yes to. So if you just say yes to your basic goals, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm excited, I'm challenged, I'm conquering my fears, it all works for good. All of it works, really.
Yeah, there was a girl coming out of grad school who, she was, I'm going to be Oprah. I'm the next Oprah. And we're all like, that's cool, but you may have to like build up to that. And she's still, I don't think she's in the business, and she probably is successful and doing something else, who knows. But the point is to that, you may really only want to be in sports, but the best job offer at that time to just get you experience is in business or community relations, or look at Danielle going into sports with cultural societal issues. It'll all lead into something, but don't turn any opportunity down because it's not the end game just yet, would be my advice as well. So, anyone else? I know we're wrapping up, or we've probably been talking for a while, but I could talk all day with these ladies. So, any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What if you're a person that's like multifaceted and you're doing sports, you're doing entertainment, you're doing news? How do you really you're staying in your lane, for lack of a better word, but you're also doing other things, even though it's still under the media umbrella? What suggestions do you have for someone who can do all, for lack of a better word?
As I stated, I bring you the good news of the day. But before the 10-year sports career, I covered healthcare for 3 years. After I covered healthcare, I've always been a huge sports fan, raised in a sports family. I would blog about sports, but I went to my newspaper, and they wanted me on sports particularly. But because I was working for a small paper, sometimes I had to do entertainment. I was at concerts. Sometimes I had to do music reviews. It just depends. Sometimes I had to be the backpack reporter with the video camera, and I just did that a few months ago, and my audio recorder and taking notes, So when I got to sports, got to the Undefeated, I was back to, hey, I'm the good news of the day, but it could be good sports news. It could be good entertainment news. It could be good music reviews. It could be anything. So that helps you. It's not necessarily a bad thing. So you have to ask yourself, are you a person that's good at one thing? Or are you a person that's good at many things? So you can hone that one thing out of the many that you are pretty excellent at, but you could still keep those other things in the back pocket, catch that curveball, and if somebody needs someone to go cover entertainment, hey, I can do that. No problem. If someone needs someone to go cover hard news or politics, it's, hey, I can do that. So once you become that person, now the culture editor can say, Kelly, can you cover this for me? Kevin Meredith can say, Kelly, can you cover April Ryan at the White House for me? I'm like, sure. There's so many levels that you can do. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. Just focus on the best thing that you're wonderful at, but make sure you're still exercising those other many gifts that you have. You're like a tree. You have many branches, and don't fight that, embrace it.
And I just piggyback over that because I 100% agree with that. But I think that if I were to add anything, it would just be, really create that job for yourself. I mean, we're in an industry that's always changing. And a lot of people ask me like, Danielle, what are you going to do next? And I'm like, I don't think it exists yet. And I mean that, especially in journalism. I don't think the jobs that exist now existed in the same way or even existed period in 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. And so understand that all of those skills can really pay off for you to create a space for yourself in a job that doesn't even exist right now. We're just in such an ever-changing, I mean, even if you think of just ESPN in and of itself, there's the Undefeated, which, encompasses the intersection of so many different areas, including sports. SC6, Michael and Jamel do a great job of bringing sports and culture into their show. I think there are just Mike Wilbon, obviously is seen as a sports figure, but like intersects with a lot of other areas. And so I think it's possible for you to sort of create a space for all of those skills. It just takes some time, and you'd have to hone that energy a little bit. But I think we're in an incredible industry where things are constantly changing, and you could create that on your own.
I look at every skill set as almost having a different language. And it's important to have a variety of languages, right? So I had this language of working in event production. That's my skill set. I'm doing very well there. But then I pick up this sponsorship opportunity that says, how do you integrate sponsorship into the content you're doing? And then I picked up studio production and learned a different language. And then I picked up digital and audio and print, and I had to learn an entirely different language. And then I picked up an operations team that all of a sudden I was managing personnel and operations for the event production group, meaning all the production managers and coordinators that work for those people. All the skill sets and all the languages built on one another and made me more well-rounded and made my career escalate because of that. So know that all those skill sets are extremely important and have lots of different languages you speak.
So I'm sorry. So I didn't know Scrappy, but I do know putting on blast is a, so I'm going to put you on blast.
On blast? I don't know what that means.
So blast is I'm going to expose you. Oh. It's exposing. Not always in a bad way. Not always in a bad way, right? So the young lady, raise your hand, young lady. And this will help for some of you who have been in the game for a while. That is my cousin in the back. She was at the executive level at BET, and now she's a lead producer at TV One. And she and I have had the conversation about reinventing herself, because I believe the next thing for her is something that she will have to create. Because she has really seen it all, and she's been on the production side simultaneously, and she balances work and family. So thank you for giving her great advice. But I would also say that what is next for her is something that hasn't been done. And so you have to create that for yourself.
Yeah.
On blast.
All really good.
Yeah, see, you're learning new language every day.
I wanted to add one thing that I know many people here are interested in getting more into the production side, but there is a gap for women in sales and media. It's all men. I mean, almost all men. And you make a lot of money, if anybody's interested in that. You wine and dine people, you still go to sports events. And I think women don't like to sell, but we can sell. We do well at sales if you want to get yourself in there. Tina, I wish do you have can you say something about that?
I will say ESPN has a very diverse sales workforce with lots of women, men, everybody, which I am super appreciative of. But when, I'm not out there officially selling because I work on the content side still, and I work to figure out the bad ideas that come from sales, how to make them good ideas in our content, and how to innovate in those spaces. But what I would say is that if you find a role in those sales areas, it becomes extremely important for you to be there, for you to make a difference, and for you to realize that, by the way, half the women are the purchasers in this country, and they're the decision makers. 50% of the decision makers and purchasers are women. And it's important for that perspective in all of these things. And if you get into that side of the business, extremely important.
I would add to sales. When I started at CBS, one of my duties, and it's actually still now, is putting together the billboards. So I'm also a voiceover artist for the voiceover talent, for the billboards on our show. Yeah. which was great. That was just another thing, adding to the layers of things to do. But when I was at CBS, the sales department would send all the billboards, and then they would have to be recorded, and they would have to be integrated into all the 1 o'clock NFL shows and 4 o'clock shows, But understand the industry you're in. This is how we get paid. This is it. For all the bells and whistles that you see, it boils down to your ratings and how much you can sell your ads based on demographic, time slot. So you need to at least understand that, for sure. And I gained a great amount of respect for that. I mean, there's commercials, there's billboards, there's lower third mentions, there's title sponsorship, around the horn always when I'm more and more aware. We're, sponsored by Captain Morgan or sponsored by Guinness. And I firsthand see the rotation of sponsors, who's fighting for title sponsorship, where those ads go, who's our demographic, college kids, what are their ages? Oh, we're doing Lexus, but now we're doing something else. Maybe now our demographic is women now. I mean, I literally get to see the trends of the industry by the billboards I'm reading. So if nothing else, I mean, what you're saying is very powerful. Even if you don't go into it, you really need to understand sales, marketing, advertising for anything you do.
And the only other thing I would say is sponsorship is changing significantly right now as linear TV changes and streaming comes into play. And as we innovate our distribution and as you do things like this and as leagues are saying, you know what, we want less commercials. How do we do that? Are there opportunities to innovate? We've done things in NBA where we've done, a side-by-side, 2-box where the commercial's airing in the box while we're still in the huddle during a timeout because we're trying to implement innovations that are going to be different and unique and still bring the money in, but don't always do it the exact same way that we've always done it. So there's lots of really innovative spaces that you can be in, particularly in that side of the business too.
And on that, again, the NFL Combine example I used, my social media producer was 22. So that could be an avenue, to find these different platforms, and then it can lead to more producing or be on air. And I think what I've noticed too, not just in sales, but like I deal with a lot of NFL agents, and I know we have an athlete in the room. Why aren't there more women? Like, I think women should try to go into that as well, being agents. And so many women I know have played sports, more so than some of the beat writers. Not that you need to, but I think I'd like to see that more too. I'd like to see women in more management, more agent roles in sales.
More play-by-plays.
Yes. Yeah.
Lots of analysts, no play-by-plays. Not many play-by-plays.
Yeah. So, cool. Is that it? Thank you. How about you? Take the reins.
Well, thank you, ladies, for joining us. I think a good segue to kind of what Lisa had in question was about sales and everything. So I oversaw the women's program at the Washington Redskins, and if you saw a lot of the teams, NFL teams, NBA teams, a lot of professional leagues are bringing out these different platforms to really engage females. So one of the upcoming events that we have with WISE in partnership with the Washington Redskins is our Career Discovery Series. We have our 4th part of the series coming up on April 5th. So if you check out our website, check out Facebook and everything, you'll see that that's our next event coming up, and it's a great series that highlights different ladies in their different fields in sports. So make sure you check that out. We also have another event at the end of April. It's our quarterly meetup, which Leilani leads. So extremely thankful for having you guys all over here. Leilani's over there waving. But again, I want to give these ladies another round of applause and thank them for coming here. If they have a few moments, they will be here for just a few moments. I know that Tina has to catch a flight, but go ahead and thank you guys again for coming.